Chat is now live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this virtual overview and scrutiny committee on the 19th of January 2021. This meeting is being conducted with members and officers at various locations, communicating via audio, video and online. There is also the opportunity for the public and press to listen and view proceedings via YouTube. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and to confirm that members, officers and registered speakers are in attendance. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Chair. I'll firstly undertake the roll call. So when I call your name, please can you indicate your attendance to confirm the required members, officers and registered speakers are present and can hear and be heard. Councillor David Levitt.
Present.
Councillor Kate Aspinwall has given her apologies. Councillor Claire Billing. Sorry, I didn't hear you, Councillor Billing. I can see you.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Val Bryant.
Here.
Councillor Sam Collins. He's currently absent. Councillor Terry Hone.
Present.
Councillor Tony Hunter.
Present.
Councillor Jim McNally, currently absent. Councillor Lisa Nash.
Yeah, present.
Councillor Sue Nguala.
Present.
Councillor Adam Ruggiero Checker.
Present.
Councillor Claire Strong.
Present.
Councillor Tom Tyson.
Yes, I'm here.
And presenting Councillor Martin Steers Hanscom.
Present.
And also present Councillor Ian Albert.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Officers, Hilary Deneen.
Present.
Rebecca Coates.
Present.
Niranetta Kativu.
Present.
Rachel Cooper.
Present.
And thank you to Daryl Simmons, who's doing the support with the live stream this evening. I'm Anna Gavea, and guests we have Chief Inspector Sally Phillips.
Hi there.
Hi. Chief Inspector John Roche.
Present, thank you.
And Sarah Pateman.
Present.
Thank you. Extracts from the remote and partly remote meetings protocol are included with the agenda, and the full version is available on the Council's website, which includes information regarding live streaming, noise interference, rules of debate, voting and Part 2 items. Members are requested to ensure that they are familiar with the protocol. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? No, in that case, I'll hand over to the Chair, Councillor David Levitt. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anna. First item 2 on the agenda is apologies for absence. I have one, which is from Councillor Kate Aspinall, and substituting, and thank you for that at such short notice, is Councillor Claire Billing. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes from the 21st of January to 2020 to the 8th December 2020. Since the beginning of March, when we started to hold meetings remotely, we have been unable to approve minutes at those meetings as they required a physical signature. We are now able to approve these minutes with the electronic signature of the chair being applied following approval. There are 5 sets of minutes to agree as per the agenda from the 21st of January 2020, the 16th of June 2020, the 14th of July 2020, the 8th of September 2020, and the 8th of December 2020. These have all been circulated prior to the meeting. I would like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of these meetings of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on those dates. Could I have a seconder for that, please?
Your second.
Thank you, Lisa. Councillor Nash to second. Any comments on those minutes? No, thank you very much. Councillor Hone.
Yes, I can't vote on December the 8th because it was substituted by Morgan for me because it was my birthday. So I couldn't comment on the minutes of the 8th.
Thank you, Terry. No other hands up. Anna, could we proceed to the vote, please?
Apologies, Chair. Yes. Could members please vote in the usual way using the green tick for yes, red cross for no, or blue raised hand for abstain? Thank you.
And we note that Councillor Hone isn't voting on the meeting, he said. Has everyone voted? I'm just waiting.
Sorry,
for
I've not
everyone
got
to-
the signs up to say different colours on my Zoom.
The voting now is under reactions. If you haven't used it recently, there's been a software update and voting is now under reactions.
I do beg your pardon.
Sorry, Terry, I should have pointed that out at the beginning.
Chair, just for the record, can I say that I wasn't at the meeting on the 8th of December either, so I won't be voting on that one.
Thanks, Tom.
We have 4 votes for yes and none for no.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that as carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I therefore authorise the committee member and scrutiny officer to apply my electronic signature and initials to those approved minutes. Item 4 is any other business. We have none. Item 5, Chairman's announcements. In accordance with the council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recordings will be available to view on, or available to hear, on ModGov, and the film recording via the NHDC YouTube channel. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and the speaking rights is as set out under the Chair's announcement on the agenda. Item 6, public participation. This evening we welcome Chief Inspector Sally Phillips, Chief Inspector John Roche from Hertfordshire Constabulary, and Sarah Patement of Survivors Against Domestic Abuse and the Community Safety Manager, Stevenage Borough Council, in order to present the annual crime and disorder matters update that we scheduled in through the work programme. Sally, is it you who wants to start, I think?
I think it's Becky that's going to
Thank-
start off initially.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Chair. Yes, by way of introduction, just following on from the members' feedback at the last committee meeting, I'm very pleased that the former North Herts Police Chief Inspector Sally Phillips is with us today to present and also introduce her successor, Chief Inspector to John Roche, who will be taking over from Sally, as well as Sarah Patement, as you say, Chair from SADA, who have been able to join us to provide an overview of policing during the pandemic and the impact that the coronavirus has had on antisocial and crime, in particular domestic abuse, as well as to provide the committee with a summary of the domestic abuse services that are provided by SADA that are available to North Herts residents. So I'll now hand over to Chief Inspector Sally Phillips to start off that presentation and to give her update, which will then be followed on by Sarah Patement and the services for SADA. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Becky, and good evening, everyone. Always makes you conscious of your office backgrounds for working from home. This room is to be decorated and the bike is for show. But no, good evening, everyone. And I've felt right to come and deliver this briefing to yourself, in having kind of covered North Herts for the last 2 years and really enjoyed my time and working with all of yourselves and the partners. Becky's obviously introduced John, who I've known for the majority of my career with similar service. So I'm really, really pleased to be able to hand over to John, who is a real safe pair of hands. And again, it just felt right in delivering this briefing to you, is to kind of give the district a really smooth handover from a policing perspective. I'll carry on to do the briefing and we'll cover any questions as best I can. And then John will take away any actions going forward. Bear with me, this is my first week back. I've been off for a month with COVID. So if there is anything as well that I'm slightly lagging on, which has been recent, that will be why, because I've not been in for about a month now. So in terms of policing in the pandemic, I think it would be fair to say that it's been exceptionally challenging and like nothing that I've ever seen before in what is near my 20 years service. We've had continued changes in lockdown and different tiers and restrictions which have impeded liberties and have presented us with a situation where we've had ever-evolving legislation, and again we've never been in that set of circumstances. At a force-wide level, at the beginning of the pandemic last year, as you would expect, a dedicated operational command was set up across the force as ensuring maintaining service delivery was both safe for the public and safe for the staff. So this included ensuring effective provision of PPE, COVID risk management in terms of dealing with demand coming in and public contact. And, you know, to drill down into that gave us some real implications on double crewing of motor vehicles, trying to create staff bubbles within our teams to try and reduce the risk of infection, remote working for those that could work from home, risk assessments around our estates, as no doubt all of you will have experienced in your own way, dealing with, at periods, some real increase in abstractions. So we had that fairly early on. But obviously a peak again in December with that new variant. So each wave has provided us with a different rhythm in terms of our demand, and that's been really challenging. And at times crime's dropped off, and at other times we've had increase in demand, and we had to kind of set out our policing style for COVID, going along the 4 E's approach. We have set up dedicated patrols, which were launched around November time to capture all our engagement and enforcement around COVID. And that is across each district with an effective patrol plan around hotspot areas and reassurance visits around our community. We try to, again, try and address and give that consistency to community engagement based on what restrictions were in place, and being really creative around our use of OWL, Echo, and where possible, tagging in on the back of Zoom, community Zoom meetings. Particularly in the early days, we set up dedicated weekly meetings with our partners, and then we worked through those opening and closing again of licensed premises with environmental health. And it was really, for me, trying to balance maintaining that service delivery in North Herts whilst also focusing on the welfare of my team. We saw some real changes in demand, increase in sudden death, increase in vulnerability, missing persons, domestic abuse, which I'll come on to lately. So it was trying to maintain strong, healthy teams, and looking across the horizon, we now await vaccination rollout for key workers and working with our Triforce counterparts to look at kind of in-house rapid testing, again, in order to maintain our resourcing profile and ensure that we maintain that service delivery. That said, crime didn't stop completely, in no way, shape or form. Drug supply remains, and related serious violence remains a threat for the CSP. Again, it was balanced with COVID reporting and the demand coming in that. So last week alone, we've seen 780 reports of COVID breaching across the organisation, of which we've deployed to the vast majority. Again, patrolling hotspot areas. We've got vaccination centres set up with other secondary hubs, and really just ever moving with the latest development in terms of what would be a risk area. So particularly with the secondary schools, and trying to patrol and keep, ensure social distancing and awareness around the community, but obviously then the rhythm of that changes with the schools closing. So I think it's never been a time where we've had to be so receptive to change, and I'm sure you are all in the same boat on that. In terms of ASB and crime, it's clear that COVID has influenced the pandemic when you assess monthly breakdown, particularly around lockdown periods. Normally, we would see decreases in crime accumulatively across the year. So the end of last year, we ended up with an all crime decrease of 4.1% in North Herts. Again, North Herts, and I'm really proud to say and be able to hand over to John, is one of the highest performing CSPs in the county. So pre-COVID, we'd been making some really good ground, and we'd built on the increase from the previous year, again up to 4.1. But obviously it's very, very different, and at this moment now we see a decrease in all crime in North Herts at 17.4%. Now that is significantly above the overall force decrease, which is 13.2. And again, we are the highest in the county, and that equates to around 1,000 less crimes. So again, COVID really changes that. And what I would say though is whilst that some of that crime may decrease, and particularly I would say hotspots around burglary and some of that traditional crime, our demand in those complex areas of vulnerability, mental health has increased, and those crimes have, I would say, kind of different measurable outcomes that aren't recorded in your normal crime stats. So it's just being really mindful of that. Doesn't mean we're all sat there kind of being able to catch up with our paperwork. Actually, the demand is very, very different. On another really positive note, North Herts has continued to see an increase in positive outcomes. So of that traditional crime, we are sat at 3.8 of the positive outcome, and that's significantly above the force increase, double in fact. We've got some of that outcome focuses around weapons, robberies and drug investigations, which again, as I've familiar faces here when I've done my full council briefing and other engagement opportunities with yourself, it's that threat from county lines, from Bedfordshire up from London, with the drug supply and related violence and weapons. I've really focused my proactive Scorpion team, and really proud of my local crime unit and the detectives I have in there, where when we've had that crime type come in, actually we're really robustly investigating it and getting some really good positive outcomes and criminal justice outcomes through the courts as well. Of note, North Herts has seen that increase in domestic abuse, but I'll talk about that a bit later. But we, again, in my handover to John, it's not being complacent with some of the differences in what we're seeing around crime types. It's really, really focusing on the ongoing threat, particularly in this lockdown for me. There are real opportunities for my proactive team to identify those people that aren't key workers, that aren't on their way into work, that actually are not only breaching COVID restrictions, but are continuing to commit their criminal activity. And we've got real opportunity in lockdown to see that even more. And the community definitely saw it furthermore. We were getting a lot more increase in reporting of suspicious activity, some of the drug dealing, because more people were working from home and seeing it within their communities, whereas maybe when they had been going into work, they hadn't seen it so much. But again, I've been some tremendous work by my local crime unit and Scorpion team, where we are working with our counterparts in serious and organised crime, identifying organised crime groups, of which we have 4 active strands, and really tackling and disrupting their behaviour on a really holistic front, where appropriate, working with environmental health, looking at assets, looking at financials, all the different options in order to disrupt their behaviour, but also the prevent and protection work that we can do to help the community be really robust about it. And again, wanting to make North Harts a really hostile place for that type of criminal activity to occur in. In terms of antisocial behaviour, again, for me, I kind of break this down into two strands. We now have kind of COVID-related antisocial behaviour, and I've obviously covered that in some of that demand, where we get reports around, that 780 logs coming in, whether that's a face mask, whether that's someone isolating, whether that's too many people in a household. And again, we're tracking all of that coming in and ensuring that wherever possible, we deal with it positively, going through the 4Es process. In terms of mainstream ASB, obviously pre the pandemic, I've spoken to before, lots of you, in last year around the issues that we were having in Letchworth, and that was one of our biggest issues, with some emerging trends in Royston on that front, youth-related ASB. And it would be fair to say that COVID really did disrupt that to some degree. However, again, in my handover to John, it's around not being complacent on that front. So it still remains, particularly Royston, one of our hotspots. We've got a dedicated local operation there, working in partnership with our partners in children's services and children and young persons gang team to try and deter people from going down that route, look at diversionary options, working with the schools, and with the schools closed, that will be something I'm sure John will continue to keep a close eye on, because I'm sure the opening and closing of schools will have an impact on that, and that's something we need to be mindful of. I won't touch on anything further more in terms of crime and ASB, and I'll move on to domestic abuse. So as expected nationally, the real concerns around increase in domestic abuse occurring. And for me, again, I've spoken to you, it's where I came from prior to this role. It's an area that I'm very, very passionate about. And my biggest fear is always that people kind of look at that increase in any increase in domestic abuse as a negative. For me, to some degree, it's always positive, because people are confident in reporting. And I'm sure Sarah will agree with me, actually, responding and dealing with domestic abuse, we really need that holistic approach. Criminal justice route isn't always the outcome, and that's where Sarah and the work that she does is so vitally important. But in terms of a policing perspective on domestic abuse, we consistently each month we did see an increase, and particularly a 15.4% in September, albeit the increase is at around 4.7 in December in comparison to the previous year. We saw a slight decrease in July, and that was recognised nationally and was relative to some of the lockdown periods. But of note, and what I've always felt very passionate about, is what does our outcome rate look like for that demand? So if we're seeing that increase in reporting, that's really positive, but what does the outcome look when we're getting that through? And I'm really proud to say that we have one of the highest outcome rates within the county. And for me, one of the most important things I do is, and I'm sure John will continue it, is when I have any new officer landing with me, is saying to them, when you go out to jobs with particularly domestic abuse, but any job that has any sort of vulnerability, it's going to those jobs and when you're walking away from them, knowing hand on your heart that you've done absolutely everything you can to keep that person safe and to positively deal with what they've reported, being really mindful that the majority of non-crimes, in my view, are crimes. It's just that person hasn't had the confidence to actually say what's properly happened. So at a local level, it's making sure we deliver the best possible response to domestic abuse when it is reported to us, and that is part of our community safety action plan. I also, and I know that John will continue it, it's that focus at are my daily management meeting. So when my officers are briefing me on the domestics that have happened, ensuring that they have been dealt with properly, that those offenders are arrested as swiftly as possible, and those children and victims are the appropriate safeguarding is in place. Also going forward, I know we have Rural Crime Week coming up, and again, for those of you that are not aware, J9 is an initiative which the Sunflower Project promote, and I'm sure very familiar to Sarah, where it's around working with other parts of the community, local businesses, in order to increase their awareness around domestic abuse and encourage, if they then have some disclosures, they're able to have a pack ready to give that person very discreetly and be able to effectively signpost that person. So we're getting that message out across our community, and in a sense creating domestic abuse community champions. And again, early intervention, and maybe that opportunity where someone's been given the details of SADA will actually enable them to leave a relationship and give them the confidence of leaving that relationship and putting a stop to that domestic abuse. At a force-wide level, we've obviously got the DASU, which continues to evolve and develop. We have done and delivered virtual training to officers. So even though our pandemic, normally we would deliver lots of face-to-face training, but we've done that all virtually across the year. It's focused on what we call voice of the child in particular, so children present at domestic abuse, and that's been rolled out to all regular officers, student officers and specials. There is a new We Protect instant victim referral app, which has been trialled in a number of CSPs in the south of the county and will be rolled out across the force, and again is around getting a really quick early intervention for someone, if they don't feel comfortable in or able to disclose properly to police, then it maybe is just that next opportunity for them to engage with a different organisation and again reduce further domestic abuse for them. DASU have also been piloting a victim service scheme focused around medium risk victims, and again on our high risk cases, it's almost like all the very high end level of service, all the bells and whistles are applied, but sometimes that hidden risk is in those medium and standard risk domestics. That's what we know from our domestic homicides at a national level, but particularly for Hertfordshire. And so that enhanced service is seconded officers from our victim service team and from Catch 22 with the OPCC, enhancing that level of service, engaging with those victims and better signposting them and getting that safeguarding in place. And then we're also looking, again, holistic approach, those preventative options. So what else can we do around perpetrator programs? And my counterpart, DCI Ben Wright, who is in charge of the DASU, that's another area of work that is very much work in progress on the horizon, tied in with our multi-agency MARAC process, which is focused around the victims. So again, that holistic approach. So I've been keeping an eye on my timer whilst delivering this, and I think I'm a little bit over, sorry Sarah, but that's a broad overview of the subjects requested. I hope that covers everything, but obviously some time for questions afterwards, and I'll probably hand over to Sarah.
Thanks, Sally, and nice to see you looking better after your running with COVID. Before we move on to Sarah, because I think we wanted to concentrate from the last meeting we had when we saw these quite frightening figures about the increase in domestic abuse, which is what we wanted to do. Can we just go over some of the other bits that are not related to domestic abuse and get those out of the way now, while it's fresh in our minds? I think that might be worthwhile doing. I've got one particular one, which is around car, motorcycle meets and vehicle antisocial behavior, which seems to be quite noticeable at the moment.
Yeah, I can talk a bit about that. Is there a specific query, or I can give some of my kind of local knowledge and force-wide knowledge?
Yeah, it's really about, there are quite a number going on. I've noticed particularly in Letchworth recently, the amount of noise, Sundays, mornings, motorcycles, and in the evenings with rather loud cars, sort of very late at night, actually early morning. Is this something you're well aware of? And
John, I feel John will be aware of, because he comes from roads policing. So he'll be far more knowledgeable on a more strategic perspective than I would do. Certainly, yes, there have been periods of time where we have seen those increasing car meets pre-lockdown. Royston was particularly one of our locations, the big Tesco's there, albeit that was very much a pitch and pose, and in terms of, as opposed to driving in and around and dangerously, as we kind of sometimes fear or is reported. But that organiser has always been very engaging with police, and we've always been able to work with them. The process normally is, if we have some prior knowledge, then we will look to engage with an organiser. We will make a referral to our colleagues in roads policing for them to do a bit of a risk assessment, and we will then put in place a kind of a policing plan for that event. And that really varies from kind of passing attention because we're happy that it's contained, or it might be that actually colleagues in roads policing feel that it needs some level of attendance. There are others which are more dynamic, and I certainly I did some on-call just prior to Christmas. And there was a car meet in Welling, and again, kind of the youth community, you know, not being able to go to the pubs, what can we do instead? Let's meet up in our cars. And those dynamic ones, again, there is a fairly straightforward policing response, which is usually, if enough of us turn up, then we tend to kind of put an end to their nice event. But I know certainly for the last two significant ones where we've had 100 plus cars, and the one that I covered was one in Welling, and then there was one the previous weekend in Broxbourne, that particularly in light of COVID restrictions, a really firm stance. Obviously, each individual incident assessed on its own merits, but I know particularly for the Broxbourne ones, they served a number of they kind of notice of intended prosecutions to all the vehicle, or as many vehicles as they possibly could, where they identified that there were certain offences. So any incident when it's particularly dynamic, and again, I would encourage you to tell your local communities, if they do hear that kind of, right, it sounds like they're zooming up and down, please report it in so that we can go out, we can do that assessment, and it will be a COVID assessment. Have we got COVID breaching, along with, are there criminal offences? Is that car roadworthy? Actually, have we got offences around nuisance use of that vehicle? And again, we talked about section 59 notices last time. So, you know, anything like that, whether it's yourself hearing it or a member of your community, I would encourage them to report it in. I've not been made aware of anything that's happened recently for North Herts of that area, but like I said, I've been out the loop for a couple of weeks, so it's something, unless John can say that in the last couple of weeks we've had kind of a car meet, which he's 7 days in himself, but it's not something that's come to my notice of recently. But please continue to report in.
Thank you, Sally. Have you got anything to add, John, before I move on to the other questions?
No, I'm aware of some reporting around Nebworth and Codica, which I passed to James Lamp, our inspector, earlier today, and I know he's looking at that. I suppose it's a really comprehensive answer from Sally. I think the only thing to add really
can you excuse me to interrupt, can you go nearer your microphone? You're very difficult to hear, John.
Yes, apologies. Is that any better?
That's better.
Yeah, apologies. So I was saying it's a very comprehensive answer from Sally, and really she's bang on. The only thing to add to that is the timeline is critical, because often prevention is better than cure. and our ability to work with the landowners often is the factor which proves successful or not. And I recount a number of car meets that I've dealt with over the years where actually a receptive landowner that's willing to help us take preventative measures on their land, so locking gates, for instance, actually displaces that to other parts of the county or outside Hertfordshire.
And on that note, John, yeah, I'm sure from memory now, I'm sure there was one just pre-Christmas where we did engage with, usually they come often by social media as well. We picked them up on that vein, and we did engage with an individual, and that one, you know, they kind of went, oh, actually, no, we didn't realise, and it didn't go ahead. Some people are great like that. There's others that, are more secretive around how they operate, or it's all done via WhatsApp, and we just hear because the community call in.
Thanks, Sally. Claire, you were next, and then Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And sorry to butt in, but I couldn't hear it. My question really is around rural crime, and the one thing I'm seeing an awful lot on local Facebook pages is cars getting broken into in the early hours of nights, items being stolen, catalytic converters going missing. There seemed to be a spate up in Bridgewood Green, and they now seem to have moved on and be lurking around in the early hours of the mornings in Whitwell. And I just wondered, is that on the radar? Is there something are you increasing your sort of patrols out at night time into these areas? I'm just worried that, they'll do a lot in Whitwell. And something that slightly concerned me was the residents saying, well, shall we start patrolling our own village late at night? And I'm not quite sure that that's perhaps the answer to the solution.
No.
But I just wondered if it was on your if it's not, can I put it on your radar?
Yeah, John's sticking his hand up. I'll just say one thing before he cracks on, because that little flurry he might be more aware of recently. What I would say, sadly, is the majority of the vehicle crime that I see every morning reported at my management meeting would be entirely preventable if people lock their cars. I would say it almost feels, 80 to 90% of them are vehicle broken in by means unknown, as opposed to smashing of a window and forced entry. And it generally is because that vehicle has been left insecure. We have, that's often very common in the more rural areas where people don't lock their cars. And I will repeatedly remind my parents to lock their cars because, before they suffer their own fate, because I think there's just a sense of it won't happen. At times, particularly when we've had those flurries, we will get out and try and do further messaging to remind, I think it was my first year, it was Ashwell. I sent mine out and go and try car door handles, and the amount of car doors that were open in Ashwell. And so I said, and if there's a door open, go and knock on that person's door and advise them that their car's been left insecure. We have had some, what I'll describe as little flurries, where we literally have a night where someone who is a professional motor vehicle thief will come in and will do a spate. And we have got someone, unless John, that's where John might chip in, unless we've had a positive identification, there is an individual where they are particularly distinctive in terms of how they conduct their criminality and what they wear, albeit facially, but we get them on the Ring doorbells. So we know that we've got one or two individuals that will parachute into North Herts, do a spree for a night, and they don't come back for a couple of months. And that's really tricky to then try and investigate. If they kept coming, it's kind of easier to some degree repeatedly. When they just come for one night and they go away for a few months, that's trickier. That said, I have no doubt that we will get to a point where we pick up, there's at least one or two, and my local crime are absolutely ready to pounce when we have a lucky break and that person, either we're able to get to him in time when it comes in live, or we get then a really good facial image of him, or some other where he's dropped a little mark of himself, and I'm fairly confident it's a he. So yeah, preventable. My biggest message would be, please tell your communities to lock their cars.
Thanks,
But I'll hand over to John.
Thanks.
Yeah, so in answer to your first question, yes, we are aware. So unfortunately, that happened on my watch. The little flurry was over one night, we say, and it was 4 or 5 offences within a very, very close time frame. There's an intelligence case that we've already developed, and I've got a fairly good idea who we should be targeting as offenders for that. And Local Crime and Scorpion are already developing that intelligence. And I really would just echo Sally's comments around vehicle crime. It is opportunistic, and there's a bit of health warning there around crime statistics, because the National Crime Recording Standards say we have to record crimes that come to our attention. So if we had a bit of CCTV and you can see somebody walking down the road, literally trying door handle after door handle, which I've had when I used to manage St Albans, it plays havoc with your crime statistics and your community confidence, for lack of a better expression, when actually you've got one offender in one location for a very, very small period of time. So a bit of reassurance. I've got a fairly good idea who targeted Whitwell over the weekend, and we've got resources allocated to them.
Their time will come.
Thanks, John. Terry.
Yes, if I may, thank you. A completely different question, I guess, Sally, I guess it might be for you, is we read in the media that a significant number of records have been lost by Her Majesty's inspectors. So I'm wondering what impact that has or could have on your ability to do your job in North Hertfordshire, or anywhere in Hertfordshire, or anywhere where you might be. So
yeah, so that obviously broke earlier in the week, and my understanding, and to some degree, not like we've been in identical sets of circumstances, but as you would imagine, there is often at times data issues that we have to overcome, whatever they may well be. In this set of circumstances, my expectation would be that as a force, we will get notified in due course by the Home Office the detail and circumstances of what that looks like and the period of time that that data feed relates to, and will hopefully enable each police force that fed data through within that time period to almost re-feed it in, potentially. It's the IT elements of it. I will not try and attempt to kind of go any further, because I'm not that well experienced on that front, but certainly the Home Office will be reaching out to the relevant force leads around P&C to rectify that issue. Now, obviously, they talked about it mainly relating to persons that had been released no further action. So hopefully did that mean that the risk level was low? For me, whilst it might, the focus and our focus will be, once we've got that detail from the Home Office, is obviously rectifying that data gap and getting it sorted. And my colleagues, who are far more experienced in the IT world, I have no doubt will be, if they're not already, working on that detail.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Right, okay, we'll go back to the main subject of the domestic abuse. And Sarah, good evening.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so thank you for having me this evening. I'm just going to go through a short presentation with you. I think someone's going to share the screen for me. Going to be?
Yes,
yeah, there we go. Brilliant. So I'm just going to run through a quick presentation for you of what we're actually doing, and if you've got any questions at the end, please do ask me. The front screen does say myself and Tanya. Tanya is our domestic abuse liaison officer. I did say to her that I would deal with this evening for her, but she's a big part of the work we do, and without her we wouldn't have a service, so I'll thank her even though she's not here. So our achievements and successes during 2021. So we've launched SADA across Hertfordshire and now includes Hertsmere. So we're now in 5 areas across Hertfordshire, which includes Stevenage, North Herts, Brun and Hatfield, East Herts, and now Hertsmere. And what I would like to say is that I think that if it wasn't for the support we'd had from North Hertfordshire Council in the first place, when I came to Martin Lawrence and said about this service that we'd started in Stevenage, I don't think we would have been able to go any further around the county. So it's because we've been supported so much by yourselves. We've also run a successful drop-in that now goes virtual. So we looked at how during COVID we could still have our drop-ins, which are vital to our survivors. These happen every week on a Friday and involves our partners, and sometimes different groups like the police can come and talk to people. We have people come from GP surgeries that can just come and talk to our survivors when they might not get the chance to do that. And every Friday we have between 10 and 15 of our clients that come and talk to each other. Some have just started their journeys of being a survivor. Others are further on with that and actually help out with the drop-in and actually work with us as volunteers. Interview with the BBC and various media coverers happened over the last year, and the comic newspaper, also in your magazines that you've sent out to your residents, just saying to people, look, if you want support, please come and talk to us. Lots of social media campaigns across all the areas that we cover. We've developed our You, Me and Mum course, which is to help parents and children come to terms with what's happened around domestic abuse. And this is a 10-week course, which now we're doing virtually. We had some successes with our 16 days of action, where we ran lots of different media campaigns and did lots about reporting, so people could come through to us over those 16 days. And we also got our White Ribbon accreditation, which is the 2nd year in concession for that. We've given out lots and lots of SADA Christmas gifts and food parcels. So at the beginning of Christmas, we decided that we want everybody that was one of our clients to have a really good Christmas. So we put out a social media campaign asking for Christmas trees and for baubles and things like that, and for Christmas gifts that we could give out. That was absolutely amazing, and everybody ended up with a Christmas tree that wanted one. We've also enhanced our modern slavery service, and all of my team, which in total there are 14 of us, are all first responders for modern slavery, because we've seen the link that is between modern slavery and domestic abuse. We've expanded our safe space provision. So back in March, we had 2 safe spaces, one in Stevenage and one in North Herts, and these were available for anybody that needs to flee domestic abuse and wanted that time to think about what they were going to do. We quickly realised that because of the pandemic, there was a lot of issues with people not being able to go anywhere. Also, people that had medical issues that were told they had to leave refuges. What we want to do is make sure we can provide a provision for them. So together with yourselves, through Housing Benefit Stevenage, we were able to get on board 20 properties in total, which means that we can allow people to stay there for a lot longer. We've also brought on the Housing First model, which means that some of our tenants will actually stay in those properties and they'll become their forever home, which means it gives them a new start right from the very beginning. We've published our survivor stories on Amazon and have our own book. And the end of our 16 days of action was our SADA virtual grotto, where we wanted to ensure that all the children that had been referred to our service actually got to see Father Christmas. So we did it all via Zoom. Father Christmas and his elves came and actually met with all of our survivors' children. So our next slide. So that's just some of the pictures of things that we've been doing. So there you can see our grotto, which is in one of our rooms at Stevenage Borough Council. We decorated. Also our picture of our White Ribbon accreditation and our domestic abuse survivors books that went out on Amazon. Next slide, please. We've been working really closely with other partners, including Electric Food Bank, who have been amazing. And this photo here, you can see some of the food parcels they put together for our survivors of domestic abuse in their safe spaces. I think in total we delivered about 60 food parcels from the Lecturers Food Bank to people that needed food over Christmas. So that was we were really grateful to them for the help. As far as funding is concerned, we received 20,000 for 2021 from North Herts District Council. We received 82,000 from the Ministry of Housing, which paid for all the tenancies initially on our 18 other safe spaces during COVID. We received 5,600 from the Letchworth Heritage Fund. And this was to help the areas where we'd indicated in Letchworth where there were some real pockets of domestic abuse that we wanted to tackle. And then obviously, as I've mentioned, the food bank. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to show you the types of support that we've been seeing during the first lockdown period. So from the top, we've got where we've helped people to remain in their home and we provided extra security for them. Doorbells as well, where we give out video doorbells, which is an easy way to make people feel safe. We referred 11 clients through for some legal advice. 25 people did go to refuge. We also moved 6 people into our move-on accommodation. We helped some people with local authority applications for properties. We did a drop-in and the You, Me, Mum service. We referred some clients through to children's services. Some clients returned home after they'd been to refuge. Other partner referrals as well, so to other agencies that we may work with. There were some that didn't require support. Some we worked with housing associations to get them a managed move rather than having to have to just give up their home. Some we helped into rented accommodation, and some of them weren't actually DA, they were more of relationship breakdowns. But when you look at the work that we do with the housing association, so the big piece of work we do is we settle housing association in your area, and we've helped them to develop their policies and procedures around domestic abuse, so that any cases that get referred to them now come through to us. We also do training with all their frontline staff and with your own frontline staff to ensure that they are aware of what the signs are of domestic abuse. And this included last week us doing training with the repairs team again down at Settle Housing Association. And we also do dip sampling with them every quarter. And this is where I will go and have, they'll give me 5 or 6 cases they've been working on for the past quarter. I will look at them and ensure that actually they've been managed in the way they should be, in line with reporting domestic abuse. Has a risk assessment been completed? Have they referred them to the right people for support? And this way we can ensure that obviously all our services are in line and working the way they should do. Next slide, please. This is the standard of our Stevenage safe space. As you can see, it's all very nice. What we wanted to do is to ensure that anyone that went into a safe space felt like it was a home. It didn't want it to feel like a hotel. I didn't want it to feel like it was it had been used lots. So we do make sure that they're all to this standard. All our properties are to this standard. We have a cleaner that can go in and do cleaning every couple of weeks. We have someone that goes and does the gardens where we've got gardens. And we also get help with looking at small maintenance issues as well. So Settle Housing Association helped us with getting one property back up that had some damage done to it. And obviously the repairs team at Stevenage also helped out with window locks and things like that. We're lucky enough as well to get the fire service involved, and they go and check to make sure that we've got the right fire precautions in there and that we've got the right locks on windows and the right signage up. Next slide, please. This is our North Herts safe space. This is the first one we had in North Herts. And again, this house looks very much like the last one. It's very nice, it's very clean. I wanted properties where I would be happy to take my family to, and that somebody walked in there and say, yes, actually, I can feel like I'm at home here. So moving on, please. So the idea of the safe space. So we secured funding initially from the government to have a second safe space in North Herts, and allowed to secure a 3-bedroom house as private landlord in Letchworth. As we said, it's completely managed by a dedicated team. And now that we have the 20 properties, all of those properties are managed by specialist housing DA workers. They do virtual meetings with their clients every Wednesday. They have a support plan. We look at what is going to be their move-on plan, and it gives them that time to reflect. One case in particular that we've got in North Herts at the moment is a lady who left her house in a different area, came to our area fleeing. She wants to return home, but because of COVID, the courts have taken so long. She was due in court in July, which is then put off to December. It's now been put off again till May. So she's been lucky enough to be able to stay in our safe space until that time, until she can return to her home with her orders in place. And this is something I think is really essential part of the work that we do. Not everybody wants to flee or go to refuge for a year and a half with children, or they may have adult children, they may have boys over a certain age. They may also have a job, which means that paying for refuge is actually out of their price range. So if we can actually help them with a safe space until such time they can go back to their property or move on to a different property, then obviously that can really help them. We do also make sure they've all got food vouchers, which we give out to them, and also essential bags. All the properties have food supplied to them, things like nappies and toothbrushes, all the things that you would need if you had to flee very, very quickly. So the course that we said, so You, Me, Mum, part of our service, which is now the course for parents to understand the impact of domestic abuse on their children and how to rebuild their relationship. It's a 10-week course and gives insight into the behaviour and roles of the children and how to tackle this. So we're rolling this out again in February 2021 on a virtual basis, and we've got, I think, 15 people signed up already that are going to do that course. We've got a champions network, and we offer free champions training to all our internal and external partners and agencies. And this is just so that when people refer into our agency, they know exactly what it is that we offer and can actually tell the victim that. We don't want people to have to keep telling their story over and over again. People should have to tell the story once, and then from that we can pick up what it is they need. We offer domestic abuse and safety planning training along with the dash. We've sent training to our external and internal partners, and we continue to do that in Stevenage and in North Herts. And as I said, we've just completed training with Settled Housing Association. And that is it. If there's any questions anybody would like to ask.
Thank you, Sarah. That's very impressive, and particularly that increase in the safe space to 20 properties. Tell me, does it take it must take quite a huge amount of funding on that?
We were lucky enough to have the funding from Ministry of Housing to actually get the rentals on those properties for the period of time we needed them. So that's what we did initially, was to do it that way, and we were lucky enough to get that funding to do that. Going forward, we've got to look at other pots of funding, and I'm constantly, all the time, weekends, nights, just looking for different types of funding bids we can go through to keep the service going, because it is an essential part of the work that we do. It is the difference it makes to someone having somewhere to go and not having somewhere to go is massive. We saw a 95% increase in referrals, and we are still seeing a massive increase at the moment. The staff are running out of our service now as well, because obviously we've got property, so we've got to have someone there in case there's any issues. They work constantly over Christmas, including Christmas Eve and the Sunday between Christmas and New Year. They were out doing stuff because people needed them. It's just an essential part of the service, and obviously we are funded by anyone that has our service, and that's the only way we can get funding through at the moment. So it is literally constantly, all the time, funding, always.
Thanks, Sarah. That's really helpful. Just before I come on to Claire, what's the sort of average occupancy in a safe space? Is there such a thing, or is it?
Yeah, it should be 6 months. It should be 6 months. That was the idea when we first looked at it in April. Obviously, in some cases, it's been longer because we're still in the same situation. So we've had to extend that. We've got a couple of properties that have said that have using the Housing First model, which means we took on the property and paid the deposit for it, and now the person that's in there have re-established themselves in that community and actually going to take over the tenancy from the private landlord, and will continue with that property, which is a great way of use of a property. And I want to try and do more of that if we can. So I would say now I'm looking at probably a year, because I've got those people that are waiting for court orders to go back to their own properties and can't currently. So we are looking at about a year, I think, as long as the pandemic doesn't go on any longer than that. Because as soon as it does, then obviously we'll have to reevaluate it. But at the moment, we're looking at licenses that for up to a year. Yeah, and then you're going to run out of space before long as well, aren't you? Yes, well, we're full. I've got one room. As of tonight, I've got one property left, and that's it. Whoa. Right, thank you. Claire, Billing.
Yeah, I was just going to it's great work that you're doing. I know a lot of residents that I speak to are often fearful of, leaving a domestic abusive relationship because of, the only choice they've got is to go into a refuge, and the refuge isn't really where somebody wants to go. So it's great work that you're doing. I wanted to ask, and it was something that Sally mentioned earlier, was in relation to the app that I think Hertsmere, was it Hertsmere that were running an app for people who are victims of domestic abuse. Is that the Bright Sky app? And could you tell me also a bit about the silent reporting as well?
We do have the Bright Sky app. We do use it. What's different about our service is that all of our clients, as soon as they come through to SADA, have a mobile number they can use. So a lot of the work that we do with our clients will be that they will text us. So we can be anybody at the end of that phone, and they can actually then report stuff through to us that way. And just there can be somebody from school, it can be somebody from work. The mobiles are answered just hello, because some of our clients are actually still in abusive relationships. So they will contact and say, hi, it's Anna. Can you give me a call later? I want to talk to you about John. I'm picking him up from school at 3. And then we all know then obviously that's what we've got to do, and we will ring them at that sort of time and we will talk to them then. We've supported some people that are in relationships that don't feel they can get out for over 2 years. And that is their lifeline, is the fact that they can text their support worker and they can have a conversation with them that isn't known to anybody else. So all the different apps and the different code words and that have their place. It's whatever we believe will fit for our client at that time. And there's lots of different ways. Some will just do by email to us from work. We've got one lady that calls us when she's at work at lunchtime on a certain day every week. We've also got a man that calls us in his lunchtime on a certain day every week. So we make sure that our service is actually fit for what that person needs, and it's put around that person. So it can be lots of different things that they might need on different days, especially if we're looking at travellers. So we support travellers as well. And we have to look at safety planning a lot when we're working with travellers. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to leave the relationship. But it's about how we can say to them, okay, so if I was to say to you, where's your kettle in your kitchen? And you'd say to me, it's on the side. And I'd say to you, how long has that been there for? And 9 times out of 10, most people's kettle on the side of their kitchen has been there for 10 years, or depending on how long they've been in that house. In reality, if somebody was going to attack you with something, they're going to know it's a gut reaction to pick something up and use it as a weapon. So we would say, okay, so clean your kitchen and have a move around and move those items around that are where they normally are. So if somebody was going to, you're fearful that somebody would attack you with something, it wouldn't be where they would expect it to be. People have knife blocks on the top. We tell people to put knives in that away. It's all about how we can actually improve the safety of someone that's continuing to live in an abusive relationship.
Thanks, Sarah. That's great. Thank you very much for that. I've got no other hands up, no further questions, I don't think. Can't see anybody there. No. Thank you all. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sally, very much indeed for that presentation. Very useful, very interesting as well. So you may stay with us if you wish, or however you wish to depart. Fully understand, and while we move on with the meeting.
Yeah, thank you all. I'm going to go and say goodnight to my little boy who's just gone to bed, I think. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Right, moving on. I skipped over a couple of items before we moved on to that one, which is, it won't take long. Item 7, which was urgent and general exception items, there were none. Item 8, which was called in items, there were none. So back to the plot, and we move on to item 10, resolutions of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Hilary to present, and I think we're on page 65 of the agenda from memory on that one.
Yeah, I think that it's only a month since or not very long since our last meeting, so I haven't actually got much to add. I'm prepared to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? No, thank you. We have no, it's just to receive the report. We don't have to have a vote or anything on that. The recommendation is to note the report. No hands up, so no other recommendations. So we move on to item 11, Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme. Hilary again.
And I'm going to repeat myself and say that there's nothing much to add. You have the work programme at Appendix A. You have the forward plan at Appendix B. Just to advise you that the design SPD that you considered some while ago is due to go to Cabinet in March, so your referral will go to Cabinet with that report. So that has taken some time to get to Cabinet, but that's because the report didn't actually get considered until and isn't going to until March. At the moment, there is nothing that I can see on the forward plan that is in your remit or that you're not already considering. And that's it as far as I'm concerned. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Claire Strong.
Thank you. Sorry to be a pain. On page, sorry, my page number's not there. On page 81, we have an extract of the items which were in the corporate peer challenge for us to look at and scrutinise. Who looks at and scrutinise all the actions for the other areas? And I'm just a bit surprised why we're not looking at them all at scrutiny.
I think it comes under the leadership team. Most of it is. I'll be honest and say I don't know, but I believe it's mostly under the leadership team. Rachel Cooper may be able to help me, but I might be dumping her and say being inappropriate there because I'm not sure if she can. It was decided, what, 3 meetings ago that you would have just the ones that related to overview and scrutiny. But I'm sure if you wanted to see others, you could ask for them.
I don't know what the other members of the committee feel about it, but I think it might be from time to time good to just have a look through it and just know how these actions, which were recommendations made to us from that peer review, just how they are going along, and if there's any support and help that perhaps scrutiny could give them by overseeing the work that's being done.
Thanks,
We could ask whoever it is, and I'll be honest and say I'm not sure at the moment, but we could ask someone to provide an update to you.
Terry.
Yeah, I could support that position, Chairman. Claire, I could support that position of us seeing, at least going over and seeing where other parts of the organisation, what they're up to as far as that's concerned. It would be interesting, and we may well make comment, or we may say, no, we think there's progress being made, or there's not progress being made. I think it was just something like that.
Yeah, because one of the things is if we thought that there was an area that was floundering or failing, again, it might be an opportunity from scrutiny point of view that we might want to see a task and finish or work group, sort of just putting a little bit more oomph into it. And I wouldn't like to see anything sort of that we, you know, as a scrutiny committee, we should be overseeing it, not being able to see what we should be overseeing, if that makes sense.
Perhaps, Chairman, Councillor Martin Stewart-Hanscom might want to make a comment on it as the leader and his thoughts, because I'll be interested if he's happy with it. Even more enthusiastic.
I certainly nothing against having a look at the overview and scrutiny, having a review at one of its next meetings, and certainly would welcome that. We did go through it in great detail when we had the report, and I believe it, I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it initially, the whole thing did come to overview and scrutiny. But then, you know, having a look at it a year later, or as it will be, then there's no harm in that at all. And, you know, some of the things obviously have been taken up in things like the transformation programme and the shaping our future, a number of other things like that. But so it would be good to review where we've got in different areas. No problem at all.
Lovely.
Thank you, Martin. Tony, Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to support Councillor Strong, but Councillor Hone and Martin have actually done that. The only thing that went through my mind, I remember the draft design for the SPD when it came to us. There were a number of us that were far from happy and put forward a number of comments. I wonder whether or not we ought to be looking at that before it actually goes to Cabinet.
It's entirely up to yourselves, but you did make some recommendations back when you looked at it. So I don't know if you want to have a look at it again before it goes to Cabinet, but those recommendations that you made will be going to Cabinet when they consider the SPD.
Yeah, I think where Councillor Hunter's probably coming from on that one is that it was the draft one. I know there has been some amendments made since then. So
right.
Yes, I think it might be worth circulating prior to Cabinet so we can raise any questions at the next overview and scrutiny committee.
Okay, we can put that on the agenda for the next next meeting.
If we could also go back on that peer review. Yes, we did look at it some time ago. Yes, about a year ago now, and we agreed that the various areas would look after the various inputs on it. But yes, as Councillor Strong and Councillor Hunt say, yes, it would be a good idea just to have an overall look at the thing in the round, as it were, to see just where we are and everything. I know it's been a very different year to when the peer review was done, but I'm sure there's some, it'd be worth a look to make sure everything's being picked up on that. Councillor Strong, Claire.
Yeah, me again, sorry about this. Also on the work programme, page 75, and I know it was back in June last year when we talked about having invitations to Settle and the LEP to come and to our committee. Did we actually put down a sort of what we want to get out of that meeting with them?
No,
we didn't. So we haven't got a date from them yet. Again, due to staffing issues and things going on, they haven't yet agreed to a date. We have been chasing it, but if anybody's got any specifics they would like to talk to those about, you could let me or Hilary know, and we can certainly include them. And it might oomph the invitation a bit if we can give them a specific subject as well.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting at, because you know it was June when we thought it'd be working with our partners. It would be good to see them and hear from them.
Yeah.
But I guess we really need to give them an agenda we'd like them to follow. Well, we'd like them to follow if there are specific topics that people would want to get out of those meetings.
Yep. Thanks, Claire. It's a good idea.
Yep.
Okay, got no more queries or questions on that. So taking into account those things we've just noted there, the recommendations are that the committee prioritises proposed topics for inclusion in a work programme attached to Appendix A, and where appropriate determines the high-level form and time of the scrutiny input. 2.2, that the committee, having considered the forward plan attached as Appendix B, suggests a list of items be considered at its next meeting on the 9th of March and beyond, which we have done. I think if we certainly look at the SPD at the next meeting, and also I think an overview of the peer review would be possible at the next one as well. And again, if we can, we'll just follow up on that Settle and the LEP one as well. And 2.3, that the corporate peer challenge action plan extract is attached to Appendix C be considers, which we've done and made the recommendation as such on that one. So Anna, if we could do a vote on those, please.
Yes, could members please vote on those recommendations using the green tick for yes, red cross for no, and blue raised hand for abstain.
And that was carried. About, was it, Anna?
Got
we
5.
lost some ticks there because mine's disappeared.
Yeah, has everybody voted?
Yeah, the ticks don't seem to stay.
Yeah, I can only see 5, but
yeah, I'll tick mine again.
That's enough, Hilary.
It's enough, but can I confirm? Has everybody actually pressed to vote? Because if we've got a problem, we'll do it by raise of hands. For instance, Councillor Hone, have you voted?
Yeah.
Most certainly.
Yeah, I saw
Okay.
Councillor Bryant vote. I saw sorry, everybody vote, but they all disappeared. Mine's gone again when I haven't touched it. So.
Yeah, we seem to be having a problem. So I know it's long-winded, but Anna, could you just quickly run through names and just take a yes or a no or an abstain verbally, please? A bit like a recorded vote, because otherwise we're not getting a full picture. Thank you.
No, sure. Councillor David Levitt.
4.
Councillor Claire Billing.
4.
Councillor Val Bryant.
4.
Councillor Terry Hone.
4.
Councillor Tony Hunter.
4.
Councillor Lisa Nash.
4.
Councillor Sue Nguala.
4.
Councillor Ruggiero Chaka.
4.
Councillor Strong.
Oh, Councillor Claire Strong. 4.
And Councillor Tom Tyson.
4.
That was unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Anna. You may need to do that for the rest of the meeting. I do apologise for the delay it will cause.
Okay, we're moving on to agenda item 12, regulation of investigatory powers, RIPA annual review. Naranyata?
I think I'm introducing this, but as we've come into the habit of the relevant executive member introducing the item.
Thanks, Martin.
Of course, it's a fairly straightforward one because it's a report we have to consider, even though it's basically a report that we don't use these powers. But nevertheless, it's important that we do receive our annual report. You know that the quarterly reports go in MIS as we don't sort of waste time doing them more than we need to, but this is an important report. The only thing to draw your attention to is in 7.4, we note that the Shared Anti-Fraud Service does use these powers, but that comes under the regulation of the County Council, so it doesn't come under our regulation here. As you indicated, Chair, Nuranasa Katevu is here to assist as it's her report. So if there's any questions, I'll refer to Nuranasa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Hone, Terry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can confirm what Martin Stevenage said, and that we down at County Hall, yes, we've had a report. It is my portfolio down there, training standards, so it comes through, and we do mention the times we used the facility. I think we used it twice last year, but it's very, very seldom used. It's there just in case, and it's exactly the same at North Herts. It's there just in case, and in my knowledge of a good few years, we have not used that because we've not felt necessary, but certainly county it gets used as an appropriate because we have trading standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And no, I can't remember the last time we used it either, if we've ever used it, but there we go. Thank you, everybody, on that one. I got no further hands up, no further questions. The report is just for noting, so we shall move on to item 13, mid-year amendments to the performance monitoring targets for 2021, which starts on page 89 of the agenda. And Martin.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. Again, it's me. Of course, it's an important role of your committee to consider management performance through performance indicators. This report does draw your attention, though, to two amendments we are proposing, and obviously that will go to Cabinet to confirm, but we want your committee's views. Both relate to the changes that COVID has caused us in terms of our services. The changes are set out on table on under 8.1. As you know, first of all, the leisure facilities have had to close for most of the year, so the target of number of visits obviously doesn't make sense, the original target, so there's an adjusted target there. And secondly, our environmental health officers have been very much focused on dealing with COVID and supporting the community in that area, and therefore have not been able to do the sort of visits that they would normally do. So that we're saying that target will still record the number of the percentage, but it will only be for information only, because we don't really know how many visits they'll be able to do. But Rachel Cooper is here, and thank you to her for her report. If there are any questions, she'll be able to answer them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Martin. We did discuss this last time over the Scrutiny as well on this particular one, and I think at the time we were talking about on the leisure one, when the time is appropriate, it would be start looking at the figures against the recovery programme. But as we don't know when it's going to open, we have no recovery programme at the moment. I think we'll take that at the time it comes along. Claire Strong.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, and again, reading in the report in that table 8 in 8.1, that the assumptions being made that centres will reopen in March. However, one of the facilities that we didn't get open last year was the outdoor pool. And I did wonder, if we were looking to try and get more visits into our leisure facilities to try and, I suppose, up the numbers or whatever as well. Is there any plan to actually look about whether or not we would be able to, assuming that some of the lockdown happens April, if we're maybe at May, whether we'd be looking to perhaps open the outdoor pool earlier to get more visits for the season and maybe keeping it open a bit longer?
It's an interesting idea that we can take back from this meeting. I think the difficulty we had in terms of planning to open the pool, it very much depends on, there's a long lead in time for that. And so, yes, you're right. If there is likely to be the right weather, and also that in terms of safety, we can do it safely, then it's worth considering that. But obviously, I'll take that back to my colleagues in that area.
Yeah, I mean, I know we normally open it late May, and to be honest, sometimes we've always had glorious weather before the pools actually got around to being opened up, and it is a lot of it is well used, and I think so many people will be itching to actually do some leisure that isn't walking.
I think my colleague from a financial point of view, Ian Albert, would like to have a word on that one. Chair,
want to come in, Ian?
Might be helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair, for indulging. Just to say that I've sat in on various of the meetings with Stevenage Leisure with Councillor Jarvis, whose portfolio this is. I mean, I've obviously been looking at the financial aspect, but I know very much that clearly opening the pools is under review, but I'm very much part of the of those options. Martin, Claire, Chair, is whether we might be able to keep the pools open. There's a value to keeping the pools open longer, particularly in September when the weather is often quite good. So yeah, very much happy. And I'll certainly reflect that back to Councillor Jarvis. But this is under consideration. So yeah, thanks for the suggestion, and we'll certainly look to see how we can take that forward.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you.
If I could just add, the new round of target setting is actually taking place at the moment. The target's being set by the end of January. So that report for the 21-22 year will be coming to the next Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Okay, while we're on that one, we did sort of suggest last time that one thing we could look at was, and I know we report it anyway, is the amount of views on YouTube and virtual attendance at council meetings since we've gone to this new system of virtual meetings, as opposed to what we used to get. Because I know there's some pressure coming on to try, at the moment the government's plans are to, they haven't announced anything about extending the possibility of having virtual meetings beyond May at the moment. And I know there's a fair bit of lobby going on from all the political parties to keep that in place. And it might be quite useful ammunition for us if we could say that we've increased the public engagement into council meetings and everything by actually showing some performance statistics on it and showing that better engagement.
If I can just say, following on from our discussion at the Chair's briefing on this subject, I've asked one of my colleagues to do some research and try and compare the attendance from April 19 to March 20 with April 20 when we're basically started this system to date. So they are currently working on getting that information for you.
Smashing that would be brilliant. Thanks for that, Hilary. That's great. Yeah, so if we could just bear that one in mind for the future one, because I think it'd be rather a useful thing to have for us and for everybody, actually. I've got no further hands up on that item. So the recommendations are that to consider making any further recommendations to Cabinet, and I think if we just take that one forward about the public involvement thing as a further recommendation. Can we just take the vote on that, Anna, if you want to do it the roll call way, please?
Sure, I'll just do surnames this time for expediency. Councillor Levitt?
Yes, agreed.
Councillor Billing? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bryant?
Yes.
Councillor Hone?
Agreed.
Councillor Hunter?
For.
Councillor Nash?
Yes.
Councillor Nguala?
Agreed.
Councillor Rogera Shaka?
For.
Councillor Strong?
Agreed.
And Councillor Tyson?
Yes.
Yes, that's unanimously carried, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Aneth. That brings us to the final item, item 14, member questions. I have no pre-notification of any. Is there anything anybody wishes to bring up now? Is there any other business? No, I've got no hands up. So thank you all very much for this evening. Finished more or less when we intended to, which was 9 o'clock, so a few minutes early. Thank you, everybody. Look after yourselves, stay safe, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Can I add that I had an apologies from Jim McNally. He did text me to say sadly he couldn't get to the meeting.
Right, thank you. We'll add that in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Daryl, could you stop the live stream, please? Thank you.
That's all stopped.
Thank you very much indeed.